Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to TinyBlueGames. My name is, of course, Seesaw or Chris, and today we're playing Final Fantasy XIV in 2019. Today we are talking about the Copperbell Mines. This is the third dungeon that you'll end up doing in Final Fantasy XIV, and is personally my favorite dungeon so far. The main reason for this is the actual environment of the dungeon. I'm a sucker for deep underground caves, and this is definitely kind of a mineshaft feel that it's got to it, which I just love. And then aesthetically, the monsters in it, these little copper guys that you go against right away, the crystally bugs, super cool. There's even a few of them outside of the entrance to the dungeon as well, and I don't know if you've seen my past video, I'm sure I'll link it somewhere, about gathering. Specifically it's about botany, but I do talk about mining in other games, and specifically games like WildStar, and I bring WildStar up all the time, but other games that have sort of creatures that end up running away from you when you try and mine them. These little crystal spider guys remind me exactly of an ore that's trying to run away from you, so really, really cool. But yeah, here we are, third dungeon. Really excited to talk about it. It is a longer dungeon at 25 minutes. The last one was about 15. So this one, I guess, is similar to the first one, or the first one might have actually been longer. So I don't know, but it's going to be a longer video. If I do pause to sort of like catch my breath and stuff like that, I am sorry, but I'm a normal person and I take normal speaking breaks, I guess. But yeah, let's talk about it. The entrance, going down a mineshaft in an elevator, I already have lots to talk about. I really enjoy the idea thematically of going down with your party, and specifically the fact that it's not a cutscene. I think something about being in an elevator, tight quarters, and sort of really feeling yourselves go down deeper into the ground puts a level of spookiness and a level of severity to the situation. It definitely really entices me in a lot of dungeons and raids, and I can actually think of the first raid in BFA, and I'm gonna forget the name, but it's like a Titan facility, and the first boss was actually on an elevator that takes you deep underground, and already I just thematically love the idea of it being deep, hidden away, sort of this area that's not, you know, visited very often, right? It gives it a spooky feel. And speaking of spooky feel, what are these little rabbit guys? I would call them spooky, like demon bunnies, but I don't know. They're pretty, like if you ran into one of these or a pack of them while you were in a dark tunnel, you definitely would be pretty terrified. And that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, so I'm level 20 in this video. I'm actually level 20, it's either 27 or 28 now, so I'm a little bit behind in the videos, but it's kind of nice actually, because it gives me a little bit of time to process the material I'm getting and decide what kind of videos I want to make with it. But I'm really, really close to becoming a bard. I'm super excited to A, see what that's like, B, actually see what the job advancement's like, and then C, make a video and talk to you guys about my thoughts on it, because there's a lot that I think is riding on becoming a bard and sort of seeing that transition, and then also seeing the new side of the archer, because I definitely like the archer, but it is very, you know, very common, very simple, and very similar to any archer you would see in a different game at this point, whereas the bard I think really does add a layer of difference, a uniqueness that this class has over other MMOs, and that's something I'm really excited to play around with. And I can't lie to you, I am very tempted to try out some different classes, or some different jobs rather, once I do end up becoming a bard. For instance, I'm very interested in healing. I heal a fair bit in WoW at the moment on my top level priest, and I have an itch to really see what the healing's like in this game. I do want to really push forward on the one, you know, the one job and get that to a higher point, but certainly seeing these dungeons and being like, I wonder how it would be to be a healer. Like I watch the healers in these and I'm like, that looks pretty fun. I know once I do get into it, it could end up being more stressful than anything. So we'll see how I feel about that. but just look at the like area that we're in here. Like if you're in a dungeon and you've just got these little pathways with like darkness, like I think that's what does it too, is if you look down to the sides here, you just see nothing but like emptiness, right? It makes it feel like such a vast cavern, even though it's really no different than if they just had sort of floor on either sides. Like for them, in terms of designing, it's actually pretty easy to have dark space, but it's the use of the negative space, right? It really leaves room to the player's imagination to be like, wow, this is a spooky, spooky area. So I do really enjoy that. I've been very interested actually aesthetically to see how much the expansions change how things look. For instance, in many other games like World of Warcraft, when you have an expansion, there's definitely a certain amount of style that goes with it, and it's different depending on the expansion. But you could look at the extreme cases like Mist of Pandaria, where all of a sudden we have just pretty much dungeon after dungeon of sort of Asian themed architecture and sort of clothing and armor and stuff like that. So I'm very interested to see if that follows the same sort of trend in Final Fantasy XIV, where, you know, the first and second expansion, if they have their own specific style, their own specific sort of architecture, monster style and stuff like that. And, you know, I just would be interested to see if that's the case. And I know I can go ahead and watch videos on how it changes or not, but I've really tried not to actually watch too much in terms of what's ahead of me, because I feel like I'm going to get there anyways, and there's no real point spoiling it for myself. Not that I'm even against spoilers. I've talked about it a ton in the comments. I'm actually very open to spoilers because I really enjoy seeing how, you know, we get to the spoiler. Like hearing something crazy and being like, wait, how do we get there from where we are in the story is sometimes one of the most exciting mysteries. But more than anything, I enjoy watching what's already happened. And I've been watching some documentaries sort of on the initial launch of the game and what transpired kind of with a failed launch and a very successful second launch. And even just leaving it at that, it was such an interesting story of how they launched the second game, how they made a story out of it, right? They really made it an event that people to this day remember, watch documentaries about. I haven't finished it, so I can't talk at length. I would like to make a full-on video about my thoughts on that at some point. But even just, you know, having watched the starting of it, it's such an interesting way to go about it, and such a gamble, I guess, is the most exciting part, right? Like, there was so many ways it could have, like, failed. So many ways it could have actually, you know, blown up in their faces. But there was that chance that if it worked, it could have been one of the coolest things that an MMO has pulled off, and that's the situation that we kind of landed in. So we'll get into that more, and I'm sure a lot of people will sort of talk about it in the comments. And I'm very okay with that, because it is something that's happened in the past, right? It's something I'm going to have to watch to truly appreciate, because I'm not going to be able to play through it. And I guess there's something also to say to that, right? There's game moments that you can't get back, like events like that were pulled off so well by a developer that aren't replayable, almost make them more epic. For instance, Guild Wars 2, Living World Season 1, their very first sort of crack at it, was one of the most interesting and different stories that an MMO has ever done, and it sort of led to the events of the second expansion. It's something that you can't play again, because it was before they sort of discovered how they were going to do the living world systems and allow you to replay it. It was before all that, and it's sort of lost in time. And you'll have people that have videos about it, where you can go and see different moments that did happen, and almost because of its, you know, your inability to play it over, it seems much more epic. And I think that really comes to play with this launch, with the fact that it was a one-time thing, that it was an event that you had to be there for. And because of that, there's, you know, so many documentaries, there's so much history about it. So I don't know. I think it's super cool. I'm really excited to continue watching those videos. It's hard because I have so many different things I want to do that finding time to sit down and watch a video is challenging at times, but it's so interesting. And even just listening to it, I've really enjoyed it. But yeah, I guess I should start talking a bit more about the actual dungeon at hand. What we noticed here, this was the first kind of boss encounter, and we had sort of a survival wave, which we don't, haven't seen too much up to this point. It wasn't anything crazy, and I don't actually think we were really in danger at any point, so there was not much risk that way. But it was something different, and I think that's what I like the most about this dungeon, is that there is a lot of difference happening. There's a lot of different things that they have. We actually already did see a little bit of the fire. I think it's called fire powder. Fire sand, right? Maybe. I'll try and remember when we see it again. The fire sand, and you have to sort of put it into this detonation device and have the right amount to blow it up. I should also mention, in the last video of a dungeon, we talked about limit break, which is apparently a specific skill that each role has the ability to use. This video that we're currently watching was recorded before those comments came in, so I haven't fixed my bar to put those skills on yet, I don't believe, or at least I'm not using them. So just so you're aware, I do intend to start using those. This isn't me ignoring your advice about that. This is just, I haven't gotten to it yet. And it's kind of weird because I have recorded this a while ago, but I'm talking about it once I know more about the game, and that kind of makes me very critical of my own gameplay. I'm like, oh, Chris, you shouldn't have used that. Oh, Chris, you shouldn't have done that. And it's kind of nice, actually. It's a very, sort of self-teaching, I don't know, a very learning thing to do, where you just sort of watch yourself play. I know a lot of people who play, competitively in PvP and stuff like that in other games. They'll end up watching their gameplay and sort of seeing like, oh, I should have done that, or oh, I should have done this instead of that. And you can even do that in PvE games, where you watch a rotation and you're like, that's where I'm messing up. That's what I should really focus on doing. So there is something really nice about going back and watching as much gameplay as I am doing. And I can safely say this is the most amount of gameplay I've ever captured for a game. Usually I sort of space out my videos. I used to do one video every 2 weeks when I was playing other games, and because of that, it would be huge jumps in terms of what I was doing. Whereas this game, it's been everything I'm trying to capture, because I might make a video. So fire sand, here it is. Sorry, we got off topic. We're looking for fire sand so we can use the blasting device, and that's sort of allowing us to get through doors, but it's also going to be a big mechanic when it comes to one of the bosses coming up, which is really cool. Because it's a different environmental mechanic that we haven't seen come into play too much in dungeons yet, and it's a very cool way to make it seem much more like a living world, right? That you're actually blowing through it. I mean, when it comes down to it, we all know that the dungeon is kind of linear and it's on rails, right? We're going to end up in the same place, but it does make it seem a bit more interesting lore-wise that we're blowing through here, that we're the first people sort of blowing open this area, right? So it's pretty cool that way. And my party's been very chill as well, I should mention. I haven't had a group where I've had a problem party at all, and maybe that's just the fact that I haven't played bad enough to experience it, but that's also hard to believe because I'm pretty big noob at this game, so we'll have to see. But yeah, I love the motion blur too on the screen. It really makes their explosions very interesting in this game, whereas a lot of them, it's, kind of lackluster. And I think this game does really well for its animations in general. You could argue that some of them are a bit too over the top in certain cases, but I think they really add a lot of flavor to what you're watching. So this here's the second boss, and I do mess up at the start. I'm just giving it to the boss, right? I'm just trying to blow it up, and I'm like, it's not doing any damage. Why is this? I look like a fool now, because I know what's happening here, right? And I'm like, why are you doing this, Chris? Why are you attacking it? And then we see in the chat here, the tank says, you can't kill it. And that's where I put together that there's a blasting device. I'm like, okay, so we're gonna have to blow it up somehow, right? Because there's a reason in every dungeon you do, and pretty much any game, that they're teaching you these mechanics. They're almost always trying to show you this is how you end up beating things. So we summon these little blasting caps, right? And I start killing it because I'm like, maybe we have to get it low enough that it's gonna blow up. As it turns out, I don't think that's the case. It might be, but the issue that you can run into as well is that if you get it too low and you kill it too quickly, that's also an issue. So it's kind of a very big control thing for DPS, right? It's teaching you that you can't just always go and blow something up. That's not always the right answer. And that's, I think, still to this day, like, how many years of WoW has it been? With people who've probably played all of those years, there's still DPS out there that won't stop DPSing. Like, if there's a mechanic that you're like, you have to stop DPSing, and there's no way that you can be like, you have to stop. It's hard to get it through to those people, right? And I think we've all been in groups like that. If you're doing a boss where it requires a phase of people to slow DPS, that's almost harder than saying, hey, we have to like rush DPS, because at least rushing DPS, everyone's usually well aware that they're trying to do the biggest number. If you don't know the boss and there's not, you know, an obvious thing showing you the mechanic, it's really hard to know that you have to slow your DPS. So this is all me defending the fact that I'm probably going to blow up one of these before they actually explode on the boss, because I was one of those foolish DPS that didn't really, but you can see how much I'm looking around in this fight. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Because I've also noticed that they're not doing very much damage to our tank at the moment. Like, we're not in an issue where it's stressful for the healer, and I don't know if that's something that happens very often at low levels or not. It's certainly not really the case in WoW when you have such an heirloomed up party, right? Like, if you have everyone decked out in gear, I don't think you ever have much issue actually healing through the dungeon. And that's actually something, if you watched my last WoW video, and I know a lot of you who actually just really care about Final Fantasy XIV have been watching those videos sort of to support me, and I really do appreciate that. It's nice to have people watch it with an open opinion, and in fact, you know, I'm never bothered by people who don't watch them. It's more the people who go out of their way to watch them and then they're like, oh, I don't like this because it's WoW. Well, I don't make it it's not hidden from you that it's World of Warcraft that the video is about, right? But that's just me venting. All this to say, you guys are really, really awesome for supporting whatever I do. I've never felt this much support in terms of video creation. Like, I feel like I can really try and experiment. And I've actually got sort of this idea in the back of my head that I'm going to try and implement into some future videos, that I don't want to give too much away about it. And I might not even do it if it's too crazy in the end, but I've got ideas, right? And I think it's that level of comfort and support that I've had with you guys that I'm kind of excited to try some things. So we'll see. All this to say, you can expect the same amount of, you know, Final Fantasy content in World of Warcraft. I just mean with the actual video style itself and sort of the way the video is done. I've got some ideas, so it'll be interesting if we get there. It won't be for a little bit, just based on my production process, right? When you're watching the video that I'm currently on now, I have at least the raw footage for 2 or 3 videos, and then I have some of them in development, some of them not, and that's really just that's something I've had to learn to do in the last month to really catch up to this 2 to 3 video a week process. That's more videos than I've ever put out, and I always thought that, like, I would never be able to do that. I thought I'd never be able to do a video a week. I thought I'd for sure never be able to do 2 videos a week, and the last like 3 weeks I've been doing 3 videos a week, which I thought would never be the case, and it's actually been a little bit more work, but not a tremendous amount. And that's really come down to just sort of figuring out what style of video I like to do and really pre-planning them. So it's been very interesting, and it does get us into this point where I'm a little bit, you know, lower or a little bit behind in terms of what you guys are watching compared to where I'm actually leveling. So there is that issue, and we'll see if that becomes too much of an issue. If you do ever want to fully catch up and just have little snapshots about where I am, I do have a Facebook page and Instagram. Instagram is an Instagram page, I guess. They're not heavily used, and in fact, I often forget to even like mention that I have a new video out on them. But my plan for them is to sort of give little updates about what level I am and what I'm more currently working on, because that's something I can do really quickly, right? And I can really keep it the same or up to speed with my actual level. So it's different. But yeah, it's been a super good dungeon. I believe this is the last boss. He's really, really cool. I think this is, right? With the big axe. I very much enjoyed the dungeon. I know I got sort of off topic, but that's kind of how these longer videos have to go. And this guy might actually be the last boss. I might have, I've only played it once. So no, but the last boss does look like that guy. False alarm if you were just looking at the time left in the video and you're like, well, this guy doesn't know when his video is going to end. It's because I'm actually recording this full screen, so I don't have a little timer. I'm just like trying to remember what I ended up seeing. And I think the most memorable part of the dungeon was the guy that I blew up. So that says a lot for just having a different mechanic. And I think that's such an important thing when it comes to endgame as well, is any fight that has a different mechanic. Oh, see, there's going to be a cutscene. This is the last boss. And you'll see, I'll be right. He does look fairly similar. And actually, just looking at this, I really love the kind of crystally look that they have in the rock. It definitely has some really nice colors. The motion blur, again, it's so beautiful. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have an axe, but he's definitely, like, I would say related to the other guy we killed. Like, maybe like a great-grandfather or something like that. You know, I don't know. A really strong great-grandfather. But here we are. We're gonna take him out. The tank, you can see putting down some ignore the ads, focus the boss. Really, really good of you if you've been to a dungeon before to just, if it's that easy to explain the fight, why wouldn't you do it? It just, like, for me, as someone who wasn't gonna say I'm new, I was just gonna light up whatever I saw, right? The classic DPS style of things is just to kill as much as you can. But knowing that I just have to focus the boss, it's going to make it a lot easier for everyone. Love the hammer. In fact, like, if you could get that on a character, it'd be a really nice hammer to wield for sure. I mean, like that definitely would be a two-handed hammer, I think. I mean, this guy's going at it with one hand because he doesn't skip arm day. Arm day? Shoulder day? I don't know. What's the biggest hammer wielding muscle, do you think? See, this recording is getting slightly weirder as we get to the end, but that's okay. That's part of the charm of these dungeon ones that you guys like so much. I also think my voice gets really weird. Early on, I'm nice and calm and kind of relaxed. I'm like, welcome to TinyBlueGames. As we go on, I'm more real with you, and I get more caught up in the emotion and the enjoyment of it. And I think it's a really cool thing that having longer recordings does. And I'm very interested one day, if I do end up live streaming and doing it for, you know, like an hour or something like that, how my voice changes throughout it, how my attitude changes throughout it, and how my personality changes throughout it, just based on how tired I get. But also I think it's how comfortable I am with you. At the very start, I'm trying to be very open and welcoming, and, like, you know, this is the initial period where I have to woo you. By this time, I have the most dedicated people who just want to hear me say random stuff. And I appreciate you. I so appreciate you for staying around this long, but it's interesting that you get this different side of me. So yeah, that's the dungeon. I loved it. I don't know how much I talked about the dungeon, but this is my favorite dungeon. It was super, super cool. Aesthetically, it was wonderful. Mechanically, I think, is where it really stood out. And it was, once again, the perfect length. Look how happy we are. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. You're awesome. Stay awesome. See you next time.